Welcome back, beautiful people. It is my favorite day today, Botanical, because I'm just going to keep it super easy peasy. I'm going to do my loose watercolor florals and then probably mark around them with pen and ink, and I'm very excited. This paper is not the best for watercolor because it does seem to absorb it. However, I am going to use my Viviva color sheets because these are really vivid, bright colors, and I feel like maybe the paper will pop them more. I am going to put you on Speedy Gonzales, speed you through, and then talk about it at the end. Let's do it. So this is one of my favorite techniques, to put loose watercolor in varying shapes on a page and kind of thinking about floral shapes, but not really focused, really just putting colors in blobs, to be honest, and then taking the green to sort of make some leaf shapes. And you'll see what I do with that. But I went to grab my gouache, funnily enough, and I just wanted to do a quick PSA. Use your art supplies, guys, because these are actually discontinued by Art Philosophy, and so I had been hoarding them, not using them for fear of running out, and look what's happened. They've dried up. So I'm so sad that these are potentially wasted because I didn't use them. So use your art supplies. Don't wait until a day because you might end up not being able to do it. However, I am going to add water and see if I can reactivate them, because gouache can be really great at adding some texture, but also going over areas. Gouache is like, the best description of gouache, honestly, is watercolor and acrylic having a baby because it's thick, but it also can be activated with water when it's not dried out. So we'll see if we can get these to work. But anyway, what I like to do with this watercolor loose shapes that I've just done is find moments and highlight them. So I am using the back end of a paintbrush to try and get the gouache to work and just adding a little bit more texture to the page. What I usually do is I look at the page of colorful markings that I've made in a loose watercolor fashion, and then I go in and try and define areas. So in this case, obviously these look like leaves, so I might add another leaf to it. If I see a shape that looks like a rose, I might try and add details that look like I'm adding petals. So I will go over the entire piece that I just did and find moments that can be highlighted, and then I'll take pen to really define the shapes that I want to communicate. And this is a really great exercise for someone starting out, by the way, because you really just start with very loose watercolors on a page and find moments in them. So I took my Posca pen because I find that to be one of the best for getting details. This is an acrylic marker pen, the Posca, and I just start going to town with details on the page. And I kind of go with what the page is telling me. So some of this paint is bled together and it might look like a rose, so I'll really highlight something looking like a rose, or I will see the shape of the orange ended up feeling like a poppy to me, so I'll add details that make it more of a poppy, adding like the central like stamen of a flower. You don't have to be too hard on yourself thinking about how to make it look right. The more you add also, the more it seems to come to life. So what I then do is I go in with the gouache. In this case, didn't have to use gouache, but I really like that I could add paint over the top of the pen. So a lot of times people dislike watercolor because you have to use the lightest shade first to really make sure it stands out, because putting white watercolor, if any of you know about watercolors, if you put white, it doesn't make it lighter, it usually actually makes it more opaque. So it's a totally different way of thinking when it comes to watercolors. However, you could use acrylic, or in this case gouache, and go over and add some darker elements, and you can put light on top of dark and vice versa. So if I found that I did an area too heavy with the black, I can put a light color over the top. This particular style of painting, I tend to just layer and layer and layer. You can do it all with watercolors, but like I said, because I found my gouache and it was on its last legs, I felt like I wanted to really include gouache on this painting. And if it doesn't work, similar to watercolor, you can always just add water and smudge it out with gouache. I decided to add some highlights. In this case, I used the white gouache to add a little bit of a highlight to certain areas that I wanted to focus in on. And you'll see as it progresses, a lot of this page is all about layering, going in with more color in certain areas, but it all started from that initial just getting color on the page, which is a really great start, I find, when you aren't really sure what to do with a piece. Botanicals and florals are usually seen as something that could be quite hard to recreate, but I feel the opposite. I find them to be wonderful that you can start with if you're a beginner, especially with watercolors, because no one knows what that exact flower looked like. And that's kind of one of the beauties of it, honestly, is if some of these florals aren't accurate, who's to say that that wasn't the flower that you came across? So they're a lot more forgiving as a subject matter. So I do really like that today's theme was botanicals, because it meant that I could do this particular technique that I love so much. As with all my art journal pages, there's lots of layers involved. I went back in with the Posca pen to redefine moments that were getting lost. I then added more highlights and sort of blended in some of the colors in certain areas. That, again, is something I love about gouache, by the way, is the ability to kind of blend in certain moments. I added more of the colors on top, and I don't know if you noticed, but there's lots of little dots that I added here and there, and that's just something that I really like to do on a page like this. It just adds interest, and honestly, it just ties the page in together. So if I'm using a specific color, I will find a way to include that color somewhere else on the page. Okay, I love how this one came out. I'm going to be doing more of these once I'm finished with this month, because I think that is so fun. Here it is in the sunlight, in its natural light, and yeah, it is a very botanical inspired messy May spread. I couldn't be happier with this one.